Today, I want to tell you a story about one of the greatest writers in history, a man who changed the paradigm of storytelling itself, and someone whom, although you may not actually know who they really are, you probably know about their legacy. Hi, my name is Gabe Bauer, and this is Top Shelf History, where we combine great stories with great drinks. This is The Gun in the First Act. It is the cocktail I have made for you today based on Anton Chekhov, the Russian playwright and author whose philosophy and writings continue to awe and inspire to this very day. The cocktail is made with 3 simple ingredients: creme de violet, Russian vodka, and vanilla vodka. It is a drink that is indicative of the complex characters and beautiful storytelling that Chekhov was able to accomplish throughout his writing career. Anton was born on January 29, 1860 in Taganrog, Russia, which I'm probably mispronouncing, and he would enter into his life with a difficult upbringing. See, his father, a man named Pavel, was a hypocrite who played devoted and pious to his community, but at home was harsh and abusive. Anton himself would later reflect on this matter in a letter to his brother, saying, "Let me ask you to recall that it was despotism and lying that so ruined our mother's youth. Despotism and lying that so mutilated our childhoods that it's disgusting and sickening to think of. Remember the disgust and horror we felt when father threw a tantrum at mother every single time that she put too much salt in the soup and then called her a fool." Now, by the time that Anton finally was able to gain his independence and left to Moscow to study at university, Pavel had actually fallen into bankruptcy, trying to build a new home. Now, his family was in need of cash, and so Anton, who was studying medicine at the time, which, by the way, was the main focus of his career throughout the entirety of his life, decided to start writing short stories in order to help support his family. Now, a lot of people don't get really famous or rich from their side hustles. Even really well-to-do YouTubers take their jobs seriously as full-time positions. But Anton was not most people. His writings did grant him fame, and a lot of it. I mean, he was one of the main critics on Russian society, famous. Sadly, shortly after graduating with a promising career and a successful passion, Anton would contract tuberculosis. And he managed for a while, but he eventually succumbed to the disease at the age of 44 in the year 1904. But Anton's legacy continued to spread, first across Russia and then throughout the entire Western world. For example, what started out as research and thoughts on a penal colony in eastern Russia on the island known as Sakhalin quickly turned into criticisms of the government on regard to how they dealt with their prisoners that was published in a journal in 1893 and 1994. Anton would also use these thoughts and produced a short story reflecting on his time on the island known as The Murder. Today, this even impacts modern stories, as we have seen plays written in a continuation of Chekhov's thoughts in the 2013 play known as The Russian Doctor. Through the power of his pen, Anton was able to build a legacy and an identity that continues to be befriended and explored to this very day. He even changed the precedent of writing with his own literary term that's been named after him. Perhaps you've heard of it, especially if you're a theater nerd. It's known as Chekhov's gun. See, not all things that are described in a character's story are necessarily pertinent to who they are. For example, they could be written about me that I have a blue notebook, and it's not necessarily because blue is my favorite color or because it shows the deep depression that hides behind my social mask, but because they were all out of green ones at Walmart and the semester was starting. See, to Anton, he didn't want any fluff, and he made sure to utilize that in his writings. See, according to him, you remove everything that has no relevance to the story. If you say, for example, that there is a rifle hanging on the wall in chapter 1, by chapter 3, it absolutely must go off. If it's not going to be used, it shouldn't be hanging there. In other words, if you're going to introduce a gun in Act 1, it should be used by Act 3. Sounds reasonable, right? But see, that wasn't a very popular writing style back in Anton's day. Now it's practically the standard. Maybe because it just makes sense, or maybe because he was so effective in using them in two of his best plays, 1895's The Seagull and 1897's Ivanov. Now look, I should probably tell you how he demonstrated his expert use of this literary tool in his plays, but you see, these are two of my favorite plays of all time, and they're in the public domain, and so I highly encourage you guys to go out and read them. I don't want to spoil anything. Like I said, they're in the public domain. You have Google, make it happen. And then let me know what you think in the comments. Those stories will make you think, and they'll also probably make you want to drink. But considering that, Anton has been immortalized by his writing, but now I think it's time for us to immortalize him in alcohol. So let's get into our drink. Now, to start off the gun in the first act, perhaps his most famous part of his legacy, we're going to put in vodka, and a good amount of it, because what is more Russian than a vodka-based drink? Now, we have here, luckily, some Russian Standard. I was able to procure this before the world went nuts. We're gonna start off with 1 ounce of Russian Standard vodka here. Now, of course, you can use any vodka. They'll all work, but since we have a Russian writer, I wanted to use a Russian vodka. Next, we're gonna follow that up with 3/4 of an ounce of Florida Cane Everglades Vanilla Bean vodka. Now, Florida Cane is a distillery here in the Tampa Bay area. They're a local distillery. They're really good. I enjoy this a lot. This is probably one of their more smooth, delicious vodkas, and I think it really plays well with the flavors we're gonna build here. So we're gonna put 3/4 of an ounce of this into here. Now, you don't want to go too much on this. It's a little bit more syrupy because it's a pretty sweet vodka. This is distilled from sugar cane, which makes it different from other vodkas, which are distilled from grain or potato vodka, for example. So this one's going to definitely be on the sweeter side. Don't want to do too much. Finally, we're going to put in creme de violet. Now, why am I putting in creme de violet? 1, it's a French liquor, and 2, it's flowery. What about, Anton's stories would put this in there? Well, here's the thing. There is a profound beauty, I think, in each of his stories that Anton was able to evoke just the incredible complexity of humanity in the way that he wrote, in the way that he described his characters, and I feel like we need something that is equally beautiful, touching, and slightly complex to introduce into our drink. And plus, it also works out that at the time that he was in Russia and lived, there was a treaty between France and Russia, so the French and the Russians were pretty happy with each other. So we're going to put in 1 ounce of the creme de violet here. Now, this is going to give us a absolutely beautiful color, and luckily here, that is all the ingredients we need. Lastly, we want to throw in some ice, because as with all things that are just purely spirits, we want them stirred, not shaken. Do not listen to James Bond. He doesn't really know what he's talking about in this regard. Let's give this a stir. Beautiful. Now, that has been chilled down, diluted just slightly. We want this drink to be nice and cool. Next, we're going to take our Nick and Nora glass, put that right here. It looks gorgeous, and I think before we pour in our drink, let's put in our garnish, because we have some flowery elements in here. I want to use a nice hibiscus flower. Now, you can find these. This is wild hibiscus and syrup. Give my poking and prodding here, but even so, it's going to look gorgeous when we put this in. And we just put in our strainer, fumble around with it a little bit, and pour it out. And my goodness, does that look beautiful or not? Now, the flour is a little bit lost in there slightly. As time goes by, the flavors will start to separate a little bit, so you'll get a clear bottom here. But it's a gorgeous drink. Purple, mysterious, complex. I think it's everything that would be evoked in a beautiful Chekhov story. Now, I think it's time for us to give this a taste. Now, that just looks beautiful. Oh. Delicious. It is perfect to sip on. It's vodka front, very vodka first, but it's very sweet because you have the the introduction of the creme de violet and the vanilla bean vodka, which again, like I said, is distilled from sugarcane. So you're getting a good amount of sweetness there, but there's that nice vodka just flavor that permeates throughout the entire drink. It's subtly complex, it's flowery, it's sweet, it's delicious. It's like reading a Chekhov short story or one of his plays, you know, not one of the depressing ones, but one of his plays, because he is so good at utilizing language. And this drink, I think, to a degree, definitely evokes some of the qualities that you would see in Chekhov's writing. And that sounds like Last Call. So one of the things that I had mentioned earlier in our story that a lot of people, including myself, didn't recognize with Chekhov was that he was actually a physician. Yes, he went to med school and completed med school and was a practicing doctor for a good amount of his life. He considered it to be his primary profession, but it wasn't the thing that he was known for. He was known for his work and his commentary on Russian life and for his writings and all of those things. And that's what has, you know, continued throughout his legacy. But the fact that he was a doctor at the same time blows my mind, honestly, because one of the things I had actually come across is that Chekhov actually did a lot of detrimental things to his health because he was overworked, because he was producing just enormous amounts of literature for his publications and for all the people that wanted to read what he had to say. But he also tried to practice his medical profession as often as possible. And the majority of the time, he would see, you know, a few clients here and there, but he was also known for treating the poor and doing it free of charge, which kind of just goes on to show the type of person that Chekhov was. His stories show that he has a keen understanding of the human condition and the brutalities of life, especially back in the early 20th century Russia or the late 19th century Russia under the Tsarist, you know, regime. But he was able to do both for a good amount of time. Now, mind you, by the time that tuberculosis really started to have a heavy impact on him, he ended up having to hang up the lab coat or the doctor's, you know, garments and mostly focus on his writing in the last few parts of his years. I think he retired around 1889 or 1890. But it is remarkable to see that a man who was known so well for his literary profession and for his ability to write and to see into the human soul was also equally capable of curing your physical ailments and your physical disease. It was almost like he was a doctor of both physical ailments, emotional ailments, and psychological ailments. What a guy. Just incredible. Totally deserving of this drink. Thank you all so much for watching. If you'd like to check out any of our other historically inspired cocktails, you can find them here, or you can also find them at topshelfhistory.com. Also, feel free to join our locals. That is the community we are trying to build. We have so much stuff that we can give you guys, stuff that's free, stuff that you can find if you become a patron. So please consider going over to locals and joining our community. Also, feel free to join our mailing list. We have so much stuff there, additional content for you guys to see. We have our behind the bar and so much more stuff coming in the future. So please consider joining our community. But from all of us here at Top Shelf History, remember, history is better with a drink. Cheers.